Welcome back. In this part of the training, we're going to be covering basic tracking, which means creating some trigger zones, some tracking zones, some containers in Seervision, and linking all of that together using the Seervision Q-SYS plugin. Let's get started.
Let's begin by moving the camera to a home position. From this position, we can add trigger zones and tracking zones, and we'll return to this position when tracking stops. Just use the controls underneath the camera preview to move the camera, and when you're happy, add a position container. It's a good idea to save this position as a home position in Q-SYS as well, so that your camera goes to the same place, whether it's recalled from Seervision or Q-SYS. Back in Seervision, let's add a trigger zone, and this will be the zone that starts tracking once someone enters it. First, press the plus button next to the trigger zone section on the left. This will add the new zone, then you can click on the pencil icon to edit the zone. Next, resize the zone in the camera preview window. You can have it cover the entire presentation area like this, but it's a good idea to have it cover somewhere more specific so that tracking doesn't begin inadvertently. I'm going to set it up to cover the presenter's desk. Rename the zone to something memorable, and then hit save. Next, we're going to add a tracking zone, and a tracking zone notifies Q-SYS when someone who is being tracked leaves the zone, so we can use that to stop tracking and return to our home position. Because I want the presenter to be able to walk anywhere along the front wall, I'm going to make sure the tracking zone covers that area. Rename the zone and hit save. So now we can start and stop tracking using the zones we just made, but we need to choose what kind of tracking we want. To do this, let's add a shot container, which can include all the tracking settings we want to use. Let's choose one of these presets, and then right-click and choose Edit. This is the container edit window, and it contains this little stick person. By moving this person around and adjusting the relative size property, we can change how the person is going to be framed when tracking begins. If you like, you can also control the camera's zoom directly, which means that the container will always go to the same focal length, regardless of the size of the presenter within the frame. By adding the zoom component and removing the relative size component, you can see that the preview just gives us a circle for the position of the presenter's head within the frame, and then we can adjust the zoom directly. However, in this example, I'm going to leave it set to relative size. Once you've set up your container with the desired settings, rename it to something meaningful, and then hit save. While we're here, let's also rename the position container that we made earlier. Great, now let's head back to the Q-SYS plugin where we can link the trigger zones, tracking zones, and the containers. Go to the tracking cameras page in the Seervision plugin. Even though there's quite a lot of controls here, it's fundamentally quite straightforward. In the Events tab, we're just going to choose a trigger zone and the type of event we want to look out for within that zone. Then we're linking that to the container we want to recall in the Actions section. Let's begin by choosing the presenter's desk trigger zone, and we want to look out for when the presenter enters the zone. Now in the Actions section, we're going to choose our full body tracking container. That's it. Now when someone enters that zone, it will recall the kind of tracking we set up in the container. Let's try this out with my colleague George, and pay attention to the LEDs in the plugin. As George enters the trigger zone, we see the triggered LED light up and the running LED light up. And that running LED stays lit until Seervision is happy that it's met the parameters set inside the container. Now George is going to leave the tracking zone, and we'd expect tracking to stop and the camera to go home. But we've actually got one more step we need to do before that happens. At the top of the event section, you can see there's a row reserved for the fallback event. The fallback event is when the presenter leaves the tracking zone, so it doesn't relate to a specific trigger zone. By choosing the home position as the container here, we're telling the system that we want to go to the home position when the presenter leaves the tracking zone. Be sure to activate the Enable toggle button on the left as well. And with that event enabled, we can see that when George leaves the tracking zone, the fallback event is triggered and the camera returns to the home position.
So you know how to link trigger zones, tracking zones, containers in the Q-SYS plugin to create basic tracking. Now, in the next part of the training, we'll be heading downstairs to the auditorium to cover a few topics that allow you to refine the tracking to make it perfect for whatever use case you're working on. I'll see you there.